I was recently contacted by what I believe was a member of the Antique Radio Club of Illinois, saying he had a friend who had some old TVs that he was looking to donate. They were familiar with my YouTube channel and knew that I was into old TVs, so that's what just happened. So I'd like to give you a quick rundown. I got two sets. The first one is an Admiral, probably right up Shango's alley. This is, I'm guessing, mid-late 60s, could be early 70s. Newer than the stuff I usually work on. You can tell that a few things. One, it's a 19-inch. You've been seeing me work on a lot of 17-inch sets. Right in the early 60s, like you may have seen my Philco Town and Country, that's a 19-inch. So after the 17ers came the 19ers, and they stuck with 19s for a long time. Corners, I think, are a little bit more square than the 17-inch sets. I ran a little bit higher voltage, a little bit brighter, sharper picture. So for years and years, 19 was kind of the standard. So it's a little bit harder for me to place the year on this, because there's probably a good decade or more that they made sets that kind of look like the whole 60s sets kind of look like this. I know this. I got these from a previous owner. This set saw some use. This may even be new enough it wasn't made in the U.S. Yeah, there is a tag on the bottom. Not a whole lot of info, though. HT5 seems like too short for a model number. 116, or maybe this is the model number, AG92589. Chassis number is pretty obliterated. C something something something. So that's unfortunate. Don't have a ton to go off of there. So we can poke around with this at a future date. What I really want to show you, though, is the other set. I want to show it to you for two reasons. One, it's a 17er, just like that one I've been working on. 17er Series 3, I guess you could call it. So there was a 17er 1, a 2, and a 3. All used different picture tubes. The 17er 1 had a conventional, deep, 90-degree deflection angle picture tube. So it was about as deep as it was wide. 17er 2 was a first generation 110-degree deflection angle. So from the front it looked very much like this, but it had a longer neck. And then the 3 series was when they went with the short neck. I'd like to get an example of each eventually, but for now, just have some 17er 3s. But this one looks a little different, doesn't it? If you saw my video on the other one I've been working on. So what's different about it? Well, aside from it being beige rather than orange, the handle. Most 17er 3s you're likely to see have, I forget what they call it, handle antenna, for lack of a better term. The handle has a built-in antenna, and the antenna comes out the sides and tilts up and swivels around. I came across a discussion thread on the Antique Radio Forum, somebody who was familiar with these sets from back in the day. I forget if he worked for a Philco distributor or a TV shop, something like that. And they said those are really popular sets, and in general the 17ers were very popular. And they made these for a number of years, 2-3 years. But he said those antenna handles were complex to build, expensive to build, tricky to repair. So I think this was the cost cutting. So I don't know if this is an early 17er 3 or a late 17er 3. I'm inclined to think it's a late one and they were cutting costs to streamline it, but I could be wrong. Maybe they just hadn't perfected the handle antenna yet. I'll find out when I open this up and look inside. So where's the antenna? It's on the side. It actually looks an awful lot like a Predicta antenna. So instead of being on the top, it sticks out here. So on the previous 17er we've seen, it was one of these gigantic ones, which they use on the 21-inch Predictas and some of their console sets. This has this little guy, which is somewhat similar to the ones they use on the 17-inch Predictas for the UHF knob and some console models. It's not quite the same. The Predicta one had kind of ridges, and it was more, it had a scallop for the fine-tuning part, but otherwise it's very similar. Now, here's the real kicker about this set. Supposedly, what the owner tells me is true, this set was won in a raffle and it was never used. I don't know about that. It's dirty, but it's probably been kicking around closets for 60, 70 years. Let's see how old is this? Is this 1960, 40, 62 years, 63 years it's been getting kicked around? So the first blush would think, oh, it's so dirty, it must have been used. However, if you take a closer look, the knobs are all here and have, there's surface corrosion, but not the kind of wear and tear you'd see like from a hand mark like on there of this knob being turned around and around. The antenna is pristine. These things always get broken off. The UHF knob, again, looks dirty on the outside. The plastic is discolored, but when I pulled it off, it looks like it's never been used. So this felt they put on the inside has no marks on it. If this had been getting mushed in and turned for years, it would have marks. There is no scoring on the fine-tuning knob. The interior knob looks brand new, where the printing is. If this thing had been used and manipulated and ground like this rubs against this, there'd be heavy scoring in here, there'd be wear marks. But it's interesting that the metal looks like this, because I associated metal looking like this with use in addition to age. But could just age do this? In other words, this was originally probably brass tinted or chromed or something. Now it just looks like tarnished zinc. I doubt it would have looked like that when it was new. I'm sure it would have been shiny something. So how can we tell for sure? Well, we're going to look inside. Check out that yoke in the antenna terminal. It's just really bright, brilliant colors. The circuit board here. Oh, you also would tell it was never been used if all the tubes are the same, and they're all Philco. From what I can see, they're all Philco cool chassis. That was their. So this does indicate to me it's later because that was their like 1960, 61 thing. The cool chassis. What does that mean? It means normally they would have used series strung tubes that ran at 600 milliamps. These run at 450. So these are all series strung, and they all use 25% less current than usual. So this set would dissipate 25% less filament power than whatever the B plus is overall. Maybe it's 15% less power, something like that. Let's try to get one of these other tubes out. Yeah. Philco. Very little dust in here. There's a label that fell off. I guess we know what the model is now. Boards look really clean. I mean, aside from the surface dust, I'm seeing very little sign of any heating. All the wires look pristine. So I'm inclined to believe that, hey, look at that. There's a yoke plug on it. And I'm really curious to know. A 17 DRP4. Run 2. Another sign it hasn't been used in ages. The knob was very stiff. Now this is that same control that's really bad on this set and really wonky. It's wonky on this set too. How wobbly that is. And it's a little eccentric when it turns. So they just use a really cheap, shitty control for that? Maybe. Those blue guys are actually rectifiers. Bit of green corrosion, and that's fusible resistor, and that is a thermistor. Wow, is that the width control? So what do? You take the contrast knob and there's a vertical hold. No, it's not a vertical hold. What is that? on a volume, and I don't know what the outside is. Yeah, it's probably contrast. You got to take those knobs off to get at the width control. Crazy. That is the same antenna as you'd find in a 17-inch predictor. Now, of course, we all want to know, does it work? Oh, there we go, 1961, 37th week. That's when the tube was made anyways. 1961, 40th week. So I'm thinking this was made in late 61. Which would definitely be a later production run. 21st week, 1961 on that resistor capacitor network. So yeah, I am going to plug it in and do a slow power up and see what happens. I have it plugged into my Variac. I'll start out at, I don't know, 70 volts, something like that. Slowly increase it while monitoring the current draw. This also has a fusible resistor and a thermistor in it, both of which will limit the inrush current. This does have semiconductor diodes for the B+, so it's going to get B+ instantly, and the tubes will slowly warm up. And I did hook up a signal source. I clipped it right into the tuner, and I put the tuner on channel 3. It's a little stiff, but it does turn. Alright, let's give this a try. Let's see. So let's power volume. One other thing that makes me think this may have seen some use is the controls on top are a little funky. But I don't have a comparison. I don't know what they would have been like when they were brand new. I mean, it's just in terms of the feel. Well, we're not drawing much current at all. Let's see how much voltage are we putting in. 60 volts or so. It's drawing 0.2 amps. So I can't even see the tubes glowing. Let's go up a bit. Drawing about 0.4 amps now. Alright, the tubes are lit. I'm starting to think that we have no B+, and we're just seeing the tube filament current draw. In other words, the fusible resistor might be shot. Why don't we just turn this off and I'll pop that out. Yeah, it's not even warm. Yeah, current draw didn't change any. No markings on it. No idea if it's an original or not. So this is safe to do right at full power. We're just seeing the tubes light up. Let's see, I'm up to 117. And it's drawing 450 milliamps. Alright, so we know all the tube filaments are good. Let's see, let's grab an ohm meter and check this guy. So what does that mean? Does that mean somebody was using this set and it wore out? Maybe, maybe not. Notice that green corrosion. That is a hallmark of these things going bad. The actual wire corrodes, or at least the connection to the external lead corrodes, and they go open. Or somebody plugged it in and turned it on at full power, just popped. At some point in the last 60 years. Yeah, it's open. Or 1.3 mega ohms anyways. It should be like 6 ohms, 7 ohms, something like that. Okay, so I'll replace that and we'll try again. Replace it with what you say. Well, luckily I bought a stash of 15 new old stock on eBay years ago, but I'm down to about 5. I have been exploring alternatives. I'll discuss it in a separate video, but for now This will do. Alright, let's try again. I turn the voltage down. Alright, let's try again. I got about 80 volts going in. Current mode. Turn the set on. Oh yeah, now we got more current draw. So it pegged at over 1.5 amps. Slowly dropping, 1.25 amps. 1 amp. Dropping. Settling in and around 0.8 amp. No, still dropping. Yeah, around 0.8 amps. Alright, let's try again. I got about 80 volts going in. Current mode. Turn the set on. Oh yeah, now we got more current draw. So it pegged at over 1.5 amps. Slowly dropping, 1.25 amps. 1 amp. Dropping. Settling in and around 0.8 amp. No, still dropping. Yeah, around 0.8 amps. Just, yeah, we're right on 100. Let's go to 105. Kind of sounded like a high voltage just kicked in. Oh yeah. We have a very crazy flickering raster. But here's 115, which should be plenty enough for this set to work. A little over an amp. So this is volume. I'm touching the center wiper on the volume control. We got nada. We'll wiggle the audio output tube a little. It's so weird. Why is nothing getting through? It's just a simple thing. Okay, the voltages could be way off, the bias could be way off, the tube could be cut off. I mean, obviously this set isn't working right. So there are paper caps in this, as we saw in this that I just recapped. There aren't that many. The tuner, the IF, is all ceramic. The main board here, between the resist, actually, are there any paper caps? Two. I think there are just 2 small paper caps on the main sweep board. All these resistor condenser networks. Oh, and these are the newer style too. Like when I did the Town and Country, they're like this. I'll show you what I mean. That's what I mean by newer style. Older style, they looked like just a slab of ceramic. The newer style, you can easily see the individual components and even test them. And you could even unsolder them and replace them if you needed to. I believe the white tubes are the caps and the black tubes are the resistors. But yeah, to my point, there's not a whole lot to go wrong. Ceramic caps basically never go wrong. Oh, there are 3 paper caps. Those are those black tubes. And because the ends have that solder thing, as I was just reminded the other day, that means they're oil filled, and that's where the oil would have been, or I guess they put a vacuum on one end to kind of draw the oil into it. Doesn't really necessarily mean they're any more reliable, but that's why they look the way they do. Audio board and video output board, 1 paper cap. That's it. There are none in here. So there's like 4 paper caps in this whole thing that I'm seeing. There are some behind this. That's where the electrolytics are. Oh, sorry, and one giant paper cap right there. So what I'm getting at is, I don't necessarily think it's paper caps that are causing problems. Well, things have not changed at all. It's just been kind of stuck in this holding pattern. So that might be as good as we're going to get. I'll keep poking around a little bit though. Well, I gave up for the time being. It's just not happening. Also looked at this more and realized that this has changed quite a bit from the earlier revision. One thing that just finally hit me is this is one single giant circuit board. On the other side, it's 2 separate boards. There's an IF module with 3 tubes in it, and then it's wired into this board. This is just one big old board. It's the IF and the sound and the audio all on one circuit board. Nice. Means it's easier to work on, I suppose, but again, almost nothing needs to be serviced on it, probably. Just one paper cap. So I'll leave it running a little longer. I'll keep the brightness turned down just to see if the caps form up anymore. But that's all I can think the problem is now. Assuming all the tubes are good, and I really don't have any reason not to, because it looks like they're all brand new. Oh, hang on. Am I imagining things? I thought I saw some flashes, some arcing inside the damper tube. My thought is it's the big can electrolytics dragging down the voltages. Maybe there's like a cathode bypass electrolytic on the audio output tube and it's killing it. I don't know, I thought I saw some flashes down at the base of the damper tube. Anyways, I'll let it running a little bit longer. I'll keep an eye on the current, so we're at exactly 1 amp right now. See if anything improves. I'll let it run for 15 minutes or so. Just remembered the label that came with this set specifies how much power it draws. And it runs on 120 volts AC, not 117. And 160 watts, so that's over an amp, about 1.2 amps, and we're sitting at just about exactly 1 amp. So it's not drawing as much current as apparently it's supposed to. Clearly it's not working right. I've had it running about 15-20 minutes now. Really no change. I'll let it go maybe another 10 minutes and then call it quits. Pretty sure what I need to service is the stuff behind. You've seen what I had to do to this set. So I'm going to leave off with, I'm going to put the back on, I'm going to clean this up, and let's see how nice we can make this set look while I put it on the back burner. I hopped onto the early television website and went to the technical info area and looked up this model number, and lo and behold, they have a nice copy of the Sam's Photo Fact, which I believe was dated from mid-1962. So yes, this is most definitely a later production run. And they used this chassis in both 17 and 19-inch sets, so I think this was the end of the line for the 17-inch models. They also definitely simplified the circuitry compared to the earlier version of the Seventeener. And part of that was, I think, some better tubes were on the market. Take a look at that in a bit, but right now I want to proceed with cleaning this up. So where to start? Well, the main area I want to clean is the top and a little bit on the sides. The front and back are pretty clean. It looks like it's mostly dust. This is painted metal, so we don't want to scratch it. I'm going to take the knobs off first off, clean those separately. And I think I will just start with a damp rag. Treat it like a dirty car. It's painted metal after all. Why not? In addition to the warm water on this cloth, I'm also spraying a little bit of 409. Some of this is a little more stubborn than I expected. Mostly it's surface dust, but I think something spilled on this at some point or got a little damp, so some of it's a little more adhered to the surface. But it is all coming off, as you can see. Keep rotating this around, keep a clean surface on there. Once I get it clean, I'll go over it with some car wax. A little trickier on the handle. Just looking underneath, see how it's secured. It looks like there's a hole in this cylinder, and they just rammed a hunk of metal in there and then bent it. It's sort of like a giant cotter pin. So not something I can easily get off, and you have to pull out the whole chassis to get at that. So for now, the handle will remain. I'll just have to work around it. I would prefer this in a different color other than beige. Let's just rotate now. But I'm not going to paint it. Even though I know it would certainly greatly enhance the curb appeal. Perhaps someday. I don't know what colors this was offered in. I mean, I know the earlier version, like we saw that great orange color. But as the years went on, I imagine they changed up the offerings a little bit. These just don't show up for sale that often, so I haven't seen all that many examples of it. And a lot of the ads are black and white. We can look at the SAM. Sometimes when they list all the model number breakdowns, they list the differences, and usually it's cabinet style. Alright, that's a lot better. No corrosion anywhere. That's a great thing. Generally speaking, it's cleaning up very well, especially in this metal area. There are more dings in the plastic than I realized at first, but at least the color goes all the way through. So if I needed to, I could wet sand some of these out. There aren't many, they're not that deep. These I'll buff out those dark marks there, but here it's a little bit more scratched. As you would expect on the corners, got dinged up a bit. But nothing major, nothing major. There is, however, damage on this plastic screen safety cover. I thought this was some dried goo on it or something, but no. This got abraded. This rubbed up against something and it left marks. I think that will require wet sanding, maybe with 1,000 grit, then 2, then 3,000, then switch over to polish. It's not deep, but it would take a long time to just use plastic polish and get that out. Other than that, very happy with the condition. Check out the Seventeener 3. That is painted on. You do not want to use anything even remotely aggressive in that area, especially when it's in that good a condition. Since I had my supplies handy, I decided I'd go ahead and wet sand out the blemishes. I started with 800 grit. I'll go to 1,000, 1,500, 2,000, 2,500, 3,000, and notice number 2. Just about have them all out. See those brighter spots? Those are the depressions I need to sand down to. Here's the Sam's Photo Fact, set 583 folder 2, listing the various models. They don't go into where all the variations of the numbers and letters mean, other than this one has pneumatic remote tuning, which was a plastic tube with a rubber bulb on the end, and you would squeeze it and it would change the channel. Kind of silly. And there's some variations of the different tuners. And notice this says Philco subsidiary of Ford Motor Company. Yes, this would be post buyout, June 1962. And here's a schematic. And I'd mentioned there was one less tube in the IF. Well, the earlier version had 2 dedicated IF tubes, and then a third tube that was a combination IF and detector. Here, just 2 IF tubes and a semiconductor detector, so that's how they were able to eliminate 1 tube. And they're definitely getting into more multifunction tubes, like this 11JE8. Let's see, it's AGC keying, and where else are they using it? Oh, audio output, of all things. So combination audio output tube and keyed AGC tube, okay. Vertical tube, so 1 tube, combination oscillator and output tube, a 13FT7. So we're getting almost to the age of compactrons here, where there are fewer and fewer tubes, and within each tube more and more functionality. And fewer paper caps. I really just want to see where the electrolytics are hiding in this. I presume they're in the same space as the earlier version, which would be at the bottom behind the picture tube. Boy, there's a lot of stuff. That's a bummer. They list all the cabinet part numbers and model numbers, but they don't tell you what color they are. Oh well. Yeah, there they are. Dink, 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 and looks like there are some paper caps. So this is all going to be tucked behind the picture tube, so I need to, well, take the whole plastic frame apart and slide the picture tube out the front, and finally I can get at those. So that's why I'm not doing it right now. It's a lot to dig into. At least Sam's was nice enough to provide these very nice photos of everything. I'll try to fit working on this set in between other projects. I don't want to wait too long while it's still fresh on my mind from the other 17er I'm just finishing up. Alright, it took a bit of effort, but I think it was worth spending some time. It took about half an hour. I just did it by hand. There is still some gunk, but it's on the inside. Some splotches, some dirt. I need to take the set apart to clean that, but otherwise, I think that's looking pretty sharp. So, this was kind of a rare treat to see a set that, well, I don't think it was never used. Sure seems to be low hour. Couldn't get it working, but all the major components seem to be fine. So be looking for a restoration video in the not too distant future. Thanks for watching.